Have you ever watched a natural pond and wondered how it maintains itself without anyone adding chemicals or changing the water? How does nature keep everything in perfect balance? The water crystal clear, the plants thriving, the fish healthy, all without human intervention? What if I told you that you could recreate this same natural balance inside a glass box in your living room? That you could have an aquarium that practically runs itself, requiring water changes only twice a year, no expensive CO2 systems, no complex fertilization schedules, and minimal maintenance? This might sound too good to be true, but thousands of aquarists around the world are already doing it. They're following a method developed by a North Carolina microbiologist who looked at natural ecosystems and asked a simple question: why can't we do this in our aquariums? Today, we're diving deep into the Walstad Method, a revolutionary approach to aquarium keeping that challenges everything the industry has told you about maintaining a planted tank. We'll explore the science behind it, uncover the secrets of soil-based substrates, and reveal how bacteria, plants, and fish can work together in perfect harmony. Whether you're a seasoned aquarist tired of high-maintenance setups or a beginner looking for a more natural approach, this journey into the ecology of planted aquariums will change how you think about the hobby forever. Our story begins not in a high-tech laboratory or a commercial aquarium facility, but in the backyard of Diana Walstad, a microbiologist with a passion for understanding how nature really works. Diana had been keeping aquariums for years, following all the conventional wisdom: regular water changes, expensive filters, careful monitoring of every parameter. But something bothered her. She noticed that natural ponds and streams, even those with heavy fish populations, maintain themselves without any human intervention. These bodies of water had crystal clear water, lush plant growth, and healthy fish populations. Meanwhile, aquarists were told they needed complex filtration systems, frequent water changes, and expensive equipment just to keep their fish alive. Diana began experimenting in the 1990s, drawing inspiration from natural aquatic habitats and the forgotten practices of European aquarists who had been using soil in their tanks for decades. European hobbyists had discovered that plants grew better when planted in small pots filled with garden soil hidden beneath the gravel. But Diana wondered, why not create an entire soil layer under the substrate? Her scientific background gave her a unique perspective. As a microbiologist, she understood the complex interactions between bacteria, plants, and nutrients in ways that most aquarists didn't. She knew that in nature, decomposition processes release carbon dioxide, bacteria cycle nutrients, and plants act as natural filters. The question was, could these same processes work in an aquarium? After years of testing and refinement, Diana published her findings in Ecology of the Planted Aquarium, a book that would revolutionize the hobby. Unlike other aquarium authors who simply repeated conventional wisdom and marketing hype, Diana based every claim on scientific research. She cited hundreds of peer-reviewed studies, explained the biochemistry behind each process, and provided detailed instructions for creating what she called natural planted tanks, or NPTs. The response from the aquarium community was mixed. Some embraced her methods enthusiastically, amazed at how well they worked. Others were skeptical. How could something so simple be effective when the industry had been pushing expensive equipment for decades? But as more aquarists tried the Walstad method and shared their success stories, it became clear that Diana had unlocked something special. What makes Diana's approach truly revolutionary isn't just the technical aspects. It's the philosophy behind it. She shifted the focus from controlling an aquarium to understanding it. Instead of fighting against natural processes, she showed how to work with them. Instead of seeing algae as an enemy to be eliminated, she explained how a balanced ecosystem naturally controls it. Instead of viewing bacteria as something to be managed in a filter, she revealed how soil bacteria create a massive, living biological system. To understand why the Walstad method works, we need to dig into the science of what happens beneath that innocent-looking layer of gravel. The soil substrate isn't just a place for plants to anchor their roots, it's a complex biochemical factory that drives the entire ecosystem. When Diana Walstad talks about soil, she's not referring to what most people think of as dirt from their backyard. The organic potting soil used in this method is primarily composed of partially decomposed plant matter. wood chips, bark, peat moss, and other cellulose-rich materials. This distinction is crucial because cellulose decomposition is the engine that powers a Walstad aquarium. Here's where the magic happens. When cellulose decomposes underwater, it's broken down by bacteria and fungi in a slow, controlled process. This decomposition releases carbon dioxide, not in massive, harmful amounts, but in a steady stream that plants desperately need for photosynthesis. In a typical aquarium without CO2 injection, carbon dioxide levels hover around 2 to 3 parts per million. But in a Walstad tank with an organic soil substrate, overnight CO2 levels can rise to 10 or even 12 parts per million, enough to significantly boost plant growth without any expensive pressurized CO2 systems. But carbon dioxide is just part of the story. The soil layer hosts billions of beneficial bacteria that perform multiple functions. Some break down organic matter, releasing nutrients. Others convert toxic ammonia from fish waste into less harmful compounds. Still others compete with harmful bacteria for resources, helping prevent fish diseases. This bacterial diversity creates what scientists call biological stability. The system becomes resistant to crashes and imbalances. The soil also acts as a nutrient bank. As organic matter decomposes, it releases nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and trace elements exactly where plant roots can access them. Unlike liquid fertilizers that dissolve in the water column and can fuel algae growth, these nutrients are locked in the substrate until plants actively extract them. This targeted delivery system is one reason why Walstad tanks rarely suffer from algae problems, despite having high nutrient levels in the soil. There's another fascinating process at work: cation exchange capacity, or CEC. The organic matter and any clay particles in the soil can hold on to positively charged nutrients like ammonium, potassium, calcium, and magnesium. These nutrients don't leach into the water but remain available to plant roots. It's like having a slow-release fertilizer that never runs out. The thickness of the soil layer is critical. Diana recommends 1 inch, no more, no less. Too thin, and you don't get enough biological activity or nutrient storage. Too thick, especially with nitrogen-rich soils, and you risk creating anaerobic zones where dangerous hydrogen sulfide can form. This precise balance is what separates success from failure in a Walstad tank. Temperature also plays a role in soil dynamics. The decomposition rate increases with temperature, releasing more CO2 and nutrients. This is why Walstad tanks often show increased plant growth in summer months or in tropical setups. However, the process is self-regulating. As plants grow faster, they consume more nutrients and CO2, maintaining balance. Every aquarist learns about the nitrogen cycle, how beneficial bacteria convert toxic ammonia from fish waste into nitrite, then into less harmful nitrate. But the Walstad method completely reimagines this fundamental concept, revealing that what we've been taught is only part of the story. In a traditional aquarium, we rely entirely on nitrifying bacteria to handle ammonia. These autotrophic bacteria use the chemical energy from oxidizing ammonia to build their cellular proteins. It's an inefficient process that requires massive bacterial colonies, usually housed in our filters, to keep up with the waste production of our fish. We're told this is the only way to keep fish safe from ammonia poisoning. But Diana Walstad points out something remarkable. Plants prefer ammonia over nitrate as their nitrogen source. When a plant absorbs ammonia directly, it saves enormous amounts of energy compared to processing nitrate. In a heavily planted Walstad tank, plants can absorb ammonia so quickly that it never has a chance to build up to toxic levels. The plants are essentially performing the same function as the bacterial filter, but more efficiently. This creates a fascinating competition between plants and nitrifying bacteria. In most cases, the plants win. They have a higher energy source. Sunlight, compared to the bacteria, is chemical energy from ammonia oxidation. This is why established Walstad tanks often have very small populations of nitrifying bacteria compared to traditional setups. The plants have essentially replaced the biological filter. But the nitrogen story doesn't end there. The soil substrate adds another layer of complexity. Different types of bacteria live in the soil, including facultative heterotrophs that can consume both ammonia and organic carbon compounds. These bacteria use the abundant organic matter in the soil as their primary energy source while also processing ammonia. They're more efficient than nitrifying bacteria and add another safety net to the system. The soil also provides something unexpected: natural pH buffering. As organic matter decomposes, bacteria produce carbon dioxide, which dissolves in water to form carbonic acid. But the same bacterial processes also generate bicarbonates, which buffer against pH swings. Diana's research shows that soil bacteria naturally maintain carbonate hardness around 6 degrees, providing stable conditions for both fish and plants. There's even evidence of denitrification occurring in the deeper layers of the substrate. While not as dramatic as some claims suggest, certain anaerobic bacteria can convert nitrate back into nitrogen gas, which escapes from the aquarium. This process is limited in Walstad tanks due to the shallow soil layer, but it does contribute to the overall nitrogen balance. The implications are profound. Instead of seeing the nitrogen cycle as a linear process that ends with nitrate accumulation requiring water changes, the Walstad method creates a circular system. Ammonia from fish becomes plant food. Plant matter eventually decomposes back into the soil, enriching it for future growth. Some nitrogen leaves as gas, some is locked in plant tissue that we trim and remove. The system is largely self-sustaining. This reimagined nitrogen cycle explains why Walstad tanks can go months without water changes. In Diana's own aquariums, she found that nitrates would slowly accumulate over time, requiring a water change every 4 months or so. But if she had harvested plants more aggressively, removing biomass from the system, even these occasional water changes might not have been necessary. Not all plants are created equal when it comes to the Walstad method. The plants you choose can make the difference between a thriving, self-sustaining ecosystem and a frustrating battle with algae and poor growth. Understanding which plants work and why they work is crucial to success. The ideal Walstad plants share several characteristics. First and foremost, they must be fast-growing. Fast growth means rapid nutrient uptake, which prevents algae and maintains water quality. But here's the catch: they must achieve this fast growth without high light or CO2 injection. Floating plants are the superstars of the Walstad method. Plants like water lettuce, frogbit, and duckweed have several advantages. They sit at the surface where light is strongest. They can access atmospheric CO2 directly, which is about 400 parts per million compared to the 2 to 3 ppm dissolved in water. And their roots dangle into the water column, absorbing nutrients before they can fuel algae growth. Many successful Walstad aquarists consider floating plants absolutely essential, especially during the establishment phase. But there's a dark side to some floating plants. Diana discovered through her research that certain species exhibit allelopathy. They release chemicals that inhibit the growth of other plants. Duckweed is particularly notorious for this. While it's an excellent nutrient absorber, it can wage chemical warfare against other species in your tank. Some aquarists have found that duckweed and Vallisneria, for example, cannot coexist successfully due to these allelopathic interactions. Stem plants with robust growth habits work well, too. Hornwort is particularly interesting because it doesn't develop true roots, instead absorbing nutrients directly through its stems and leaves. This makes it incredibly efficient at cleaning the water column. Water wisteria, various hygrophila species, and Rotala rotundifolia are also excellent choices. These plants grow quickly, adapt to varying conditions, and can be easily propagated by cutting and replanting the tops. Rooted plants serve a special purpose in Walstad tanks. Their roots penetrate deep into the soil layer, creating channels for oxygen to reach soil bacteria and preventing anaerobic zones from developing. Cryptocorin species, despite being slower growing, are valuable because their extensive root systems help maintain soil health. Amazon swords become nutrient pumps, drawing heavily from the soil and growing to impressive sizes without any fertilization beyond fish waste. Vallisneria deserves special mention. Its grass-like growth sends out runners that quickly colonize the substrate, and its roots excel at aerating the soil. Many Walstad aquarists consider it indispensable. However, it's one of those plants that can engage in chemical warfare with other species, so tank mates must be chosen carefully. The diversity principle is crucial. Diana recommends starting with as many different species as possible and letting the tank select its favorites. Some plants will thrive, while others struggle and eventually disappear. This natural selection process creates a stable community of plants perfectly adapted to your specific conditions. It's evolution in miniature, happening right in your living room. An interesting phenomenon occurs in established Walstad tanks. Certain plants that struggled initially may suddenly explode in growth after the tank matures. This happens because the biological community in the soil develops over time, creating conditions that favor different species. A cryptocoryne that barely survived the first year might become dominant in year 2 as the soil chemistry changes. Temperature tolerance matters too. Since Walstad tanks often run without heaters to save energy and promote natural temperature fluctuations, plants must handle temperature swings. Fortunately, many suitable plants come from temperate regions or have wide temperature tolerances. Hornwort, for instance, grows in waters from near freezing to tropical temperatures. Fish aren't just decorative additions to a Walstad tank. They're essential components of the ecosystem. Their role extends far beyond adding movement and color. They complete the nutrient cycle, provide CO2, and help maintain the biological balance that makes this method work. The relationship between fish and plants in a Walstad tank is truly symbiotic. Fish produce ammonia through their gills and waste, which plants eagerly absorb as fertilizer. They exhale CO2, supplementing what the soil produces. Their solid waste settles into the substrate, where bacteria break it down into plant nutrients. Meanwhile, plants produce oxygen during photosynthesis, remove toxins from the water, and provide shelter and grazing surfaces for the fish. But this balance is delicate. Stock too heavily, and you overwhelm the plant's ability to process waste. Stock too lightly, and plants may struggle from nutrient deficiency. Diana Walstad recommends moderate stocking levels, enough to provide adequate nutrients, but not so much that the system becomes unstable. The type of fish matters as much as the quantity. Small, peaceful community fish work best. Tetras, Rasboras, guppies, and similar species produce waste at a rate that plants can easily handle. They also tend to graze on algae and biofilm, adding another level of nutrient cycling to the system. Larger fish or heavy waste producers like goldfish can quickly overwhelm a Walstad tank's natural filtration capacity. Bottom dwellers play a special role. Corydoras catfish gently sift through the substrate, preventing detritus from accumulating while being careful not to disturb the soil layer beneath. Their activity helps prevent dead zones where harmful bacteria might proliferate. However, fish that dig aggressively, like many cichlids, are incompatible with the Walstad method as they'll constantly uproot plants and disturb the critical soil layer. Invertebrates are the unsung heroes of Walstad tanks. Freshwater shrimp, whether cherry shrimp, a mono shrimp, or others, constantly graze on algae and biofilm. They process detritus into smaller particles that bacteria can more easily decompose. Their waste is minimal and easily handled by plants. Many Walstad aquarists consider shrimp essential, especially during the establishment phase when algae is most likely to appear. Snails generate strong opinions in the aquarium hobby, but in Walstad tanks, they're almost universally beneficial. Malaysian trumpet snails burrow through the substrate, preventing compaction and ensuring oxygen reaches the soil bacteria. Nerite snails are algae-eating machines that won't reproduce in fresh water. Even the often maligned pond snails serve a purpose, rapidly converting detritus and dead plant matter into nutrients plants can use. Diana herself keeps snails in all her tanks and credits them with helping maintain the balance. The feeding strategy in a Walstad tank differs from conventional aquarium practice. Because the system is designed to be balanced, overfeeding is particularly problematic. Excess food not consumed by fish decomposes, potentially triggering algae blooms or depleting oxygen. Many successful Walstad aquarists feed sparingly, sometimes only every other day, allowing fish to supplement their diet by grazing on algae and microorganisms naturally present in the tank. Here's where the Walstad method reveals another advantage. The diverse microbial community in the soil and on plant surfaces provides natural live food. Infusoria, rotifers, and other microorganisms thrive in the complex ecosystem. Baby fish can often survive and grow without any special feeding, finding enough microscopic food in the tank. This natural food web is impossible to replicate in sterile, traditional setups. The timing of fish introduction is crucial and controversial. Diana's original method suggests adding fish immediately after setup, as the soil already contains bacteria capable of processing waste. However, many aquarists prefer a more cautious approach, waiting for the tank to cycle or adding hardy species first. The immediate addition can work, but it requires careful monitoring and the willingness to perform emergency water changes if ammonia spikes. Light drives photosynthesis, and photosynthesis drives everything in a Walstad tank. But the approach to lighting in this method challenges conventional aquarium wisdom and reveals sophisticated strategies for maximizing plant growth while minimizing algae. Diana Walstad's lighting recommendations might surprise those accustomed to high-tech planted tanks. She advocates for moderate light levels, enough to sustain healthy plant growth, but not so intense that CO2 becomes severely limiting. In her system, approximately 2 watts of fluorescent lighting per gallon for 10 to 12 hours daily provides optimal results. In modern terms, this translates to roughly 30 to 40 PR at the substrate level, significantly less than what many consider necessary for a planted tank. Why does moderate lighting work? It all comes back to the CO2 balance. In high-light situations, plants photosynthesize rapidly, quickly depleting the available CO2. Without CO2 injection, this leads to poor plant growth and often triggers algae, which can thrive in high-light, low CO2 conditions. But with moderate lighting, the CO2 produced by fish respiration and soil decomposition can keep pace with plant demands. The spectrum matters less than you might think. Diana's research shows that ordinary cool white fluorescent bulbs work perfectly well. Plants are remarkably adaptable and can photosynthesize efficiently under various light spectrums. The expensive specialized plant bulbs marketed to aquarists offer minimal advantages in a Walstad setup. This is liberating for hobbyists who've been told they need specific, costly lighting to succeed with plants. But here's where Diana introduced something revolutionary: the siesta period. She recommends a lighting schedule of 5 hours on, 4 hours off, then 5 hours on again. This midday break serves multiple purposes that dramatically improve tank stability. During the dark siesta period, CO2 levels recover. Fish continue respiring, bacteria continue decomposing organic matter. But plants stop consuming CO2. By the time lights return, CO2 has accumulated to levels that support robust photosynthesis. This prevents the CO2 crash that often occurs in late afternoon in continuously lit tanks. The siesta also disrupts algae growth patterns. Most algae species are adapted to consistent photoperiods. The unusual on-off-on schedule interferes with their metabolic processes more than it affects higher plants, giving plants a competitive advantage. Many Walstad aquarists report significant reductions in algae problems after implementing the siesta method. There's another benefit. The break reduces heat buildup from lights, particularly important with older fluorescent fixtures. It also gives fish a rest period during the day, which some species seem to appreciate, exhibiting more natural behaviors when the routine includes this midday break. Natural sunlight adds another dimension to Walstad lighting. Diana encourages positioning tanks where they receive an hour or two of direct sunlight daily. This might horrify traditional aquarists who've been warned that sunlight causes algae explosions. But in a balanced Walstad tank with healthy plant growth, sunlight simply provides free, high-quality light that plants utilize more efficiently than artificial sources. The seasonal variation in natural lighting can trigger interesting responses in plants. Some species that remained dormant under artificial light suddenly bloom when exposed to spring sunlight. Others develop more intense colors or different growth patterns. This connection to natural rhythms adds authenticity to the ecosystem approach. Modern LED technology has changed the lighting landscape since Diana first developed her method. LEDs offer advantages: less heat, lower energy consumption, and longer lifespan. However, they also present challenges. Many LED fixtures designed for planted tanks are extremely powerful, making it easy to provide too much light. Successful Walstad aquarists using LEDs often run them at 20 to 30% intensity or raise them higher above the tank to achieve appropriate light levels. The dawn and dusk simulation features of programmable LEDs can enhance the Walstad approach. Gradually ramping lights up and down reduces stress on fish and can trigger more natural behaviors. Some aquarists program their LEDs to simulate seasonal changes, gradually adjusting photoperiod and intensity throughout the year. Setting up a Walstad tank requires patience. precision, and an understanding that you're not just filling a glass box with water, you're creating a living ecosystem. The decisions made during setup and the first few months determine whether your tank becomes a self-sustaining paradise or a frustrating failure. Choosing the right soil is perhaps the most critical decision. Diana recommends organic potting soil, specifically brands like Miracle Grow Organic Choice. The key is finding soil that's primarily composed of decomposed plant matter without chemical fertilizers. The NPK values should be minimal. Nitrogen especially should be below 0.10%. High nitrogen soils can release ammonia for weeks, creating a toxic environment for fish and triggering massive algae blooms. Some aquarists prefer to prepare the soil before use, soaking it for days and doing multiple rinses to remove excess nutrients. Others use it straight from the bag. Both approaches can work, but the preparation method reduces the likelihood of problems during the initial weeks. The soil should be sieved to remove large wood chunks that might float up later. The physical setup requires careful technique. First, add the soil layer, exactly 1 inch deep, spread evenly across the tank bottom. Some aquarists mix the soil with clay-based cat litter or other high CEC materials to improve nutrient retention and reduce the organic percentage. This mix can prevent some initial problems while maintaining the benefits of the soil substrate. The cap layer comes next, 1 to 2 inches of gravel or coarse sand. This layer must be thick enough to prevent soil from escaping, but not so thick that plant roots can't reach the nutrient-rich soil below. Fine sand can work, but may compact over time, potentially creating anaerobic conditions. Gravel size 2 to 3 mm is ideal, small enough to look natural, but large enough to allow water circulation. Here's where technique matters. Many beginners make the mistake of adding water directly to the setup, creating a muddy mess that takes weeks to clear. Instead, place a plate or plastic bag over the substrate and pour water slowly onto it, dispersing the flow. Fill the tank partially, just enough to make planting easier. Planting must be done heavily from the start. This isn't the time for minimalism. Cover at least 70% of the substrate with plants immediately. This seems excessive to those used to watching tanks slowly fill in, but it's essential for preventing algae. The more plant mass you have initially, the better they can compete for nutrients and light. Plant placement requires thought. Deep-rooting plants should be distributed throughout to ensure good soil aeration. Fast-growing stems go in the background. Floating plants, absolutely essential during establishment, go in last after the tank is filled. Don't worry about perfect aquascaping initially. Plants can be rearranged once the tank stabilizes. The first 2 months are critical and often turbulent. The submerged soil begins releasing nutrients, tannins, and sometimes unexpected compounds. The water might turn brown from tannins, aesthetically unpleasant but harmless to fish and actually beneficial for many species. Some aquarists use activated carbon temporarily to clear the water, though this isn't necessary. Bacterial blooms are common, creating cloudy water that can persist for days or weeks. This is actually a positive sign. The diverse bacterial community is establishing itself. Resist the urge to do massive water changes unless ammonia or nitrite reach dangerous levels. The cloudiness will clear as the bacterial population stabilizes. Algae almost inevitably appears during establishment. Hair algae, green water, diatoms. Various types may bloom as the system finds its balance. This is where those floating plants prove their worth, absorbing excess nutrients before algae can utilize them. Manual removal, reduced lighting, and patience usually resolve algae issues within a few months. The ammonia question generates significant debate. Diana's original method suggests adding fish immediately, relying on soil bacteria to handle waste. This can work, but requires careful species selection. Hardy fish like white cloud mountain minnows or zebra danios can handle the unstable conditions. Many aquarists prefer adding only snails initially, then introducing fish gradually after a month. Water changes during establishment vary depending on soil choice and bioload. High nutrient soils might require twice-weekly changes initially to remove excess ammonia. Lower nutrient soils might need no changes at all. Test regularly and let the parameters guide your decisions. The goal is to maintain safe conditions while allowing the ecosystem to develop. Even in nature, ecosystems face challenges, and Walstad tanks are no exception. Understanding common problems and their solutions helps aquarists navigate issues without abandoning the method's core principles. Algae outbreaks top the list of concerns, particularly during the first 6 months. Greenwater algae often appears when excess nutrients combine with too much light. The solution isn't chemical additives, but addressing the imbalance. Reduce photoperiod to 6 hours temporarily, add more floating plants, and ensure you're not overfeeding. Some aquarists successfully use UV sterilizers temporarily, though this goes against the pure Walstad philosophy. Hair algae presents a different challenge. It often indicates CO2 limitation relative to lighting. The siesta method helps, as does reducing light intensity. Manual removal is tedious but effective. Interestingly, established Walstad tanks rarely suffer from hair algae. It's primarily an establishment phase problem that resolves as the ecosystem matures. Plant melting devastates new setups, particularly with sensitive species like cryptocorynes. This often occurs when plants transition from emerged growth at nurseries to submerged growth in your tank. It's not necessarily a failure. Many plants will regrow from their roots, adapted to your specific conditions. Patience is essential. Remove dead leaves to prevent decay, but leave roots intact. Sometimes plants simply stop growing after initial success. This usually indicates nutrient limitation, often potassium or trace elements that soil doesn't provide abundantly. While pure Walstad methodology avoids fertilizers, many practitioners add small amounts of potassium sulfate or trace element supplements. This minor deviation can revitalize growth without compromising the method's principles. Soil-related problems occasionally emerge. Hydrogen sulfide bubbles, identifiable by their rotten egg smell, indicate anaerobic zones in the substrate. This happens when soil is too deep, too rich in nitrogen, or insufficiently aerated by plant roots. Gently poking the substrate with a stick releases trapped gases. Adding Malaysian trumpet snails helps prevent future accumulation. Sometimes soil nutrients deplete faster than expected. After 5 to 10 years, plant growth may slow as the cellulose in the soil fully decomposes, reducing CO2 production. Some aquarists add root tabs or a fresh soil layer beneath the existing substrate. Others see this as an opportunity to restart, learning from their experience to create an even better setup. Fish health issues in Walstad tanks often trace back to imbalances rather than diseases. Low oxygen levels can occur if plant mass becomes excessive, blocking surface gas exchange, or if too much organic matter accumulates. Increasing surface agitation, trimming plants, and removing detritus usually resolves these issues. Persistent high nitrates puzzle some Walstad aquarists who expect the plants to handle all nitrogen. This often indicates insufficient plant growth relative to bioload. Adding more fast-growing plants, reducing feeding, or decreasing fish population brings things back into balance. Remember, even Diana performs occasional water changes when nitrates accumulate. pH crashes occasionally occur in soft water areas. While soil bacteria provide some buffering, extremely soft water may need supplementation. Crushed coral in small amounts, cuttlebone, or wonder shells can provide calcium and carbonate without dramatically altering water chemistry. Cloudy water persisting beyond the initial bacterial bloom might indicate overfeeding or disturbance of the soil layer. Reduce feeding, check for fish that might be digging, and ensure adequate mechanical filtration if you're using any. Sometimes patience is the only solution. The ecosystem needs time to process excess organic matter. Green spot algae on glass and slow-growing plant leaves often indicates phosphate limitation. While this seems counterintuitive in a nutrient-rich system, phosphate can become limiting in heavily planted tanks. A tiny amount of phosphate supplementation often resolves this, though some aquarists simply clean the glass regularly and accept it as minor maintenance. Temperature fluctuations concern aquarists accustomed to precise heater control. Walstad tanks often run at room temperature, experiencing daily and seasonal variations. Most recommended plants and fish handle this well, but tropical species may struggle in winter. If heating becomes necessary, aim for the minimum comfortable temperature rather than tropical extremes. A mature Walstad tank is a marvel of biological engineering, largely maintaining itself with minimal intervention. But minimal doesn't mean zero, and understanding long-term maintenance ensures your ecosystem thrives for years or even decades. After the turbulent establishment phase, usually around month 3 to 6, Walstad tanks enter a stable period where maintenance becomes remarkably simple. Daily tasks involve little more than feeding fish and enjoying the view. Weekly tasks might include topping off evaporated water and removing any dead leaves. Monthly tasks include testing water parameters, more for curiosity than necessity in established systems, and trimming plants as needed. Plant trimming in a Walstad tank serves multiple purposes beyond aesthetics. Removing plant mass exports nutrients from the system, preventing accumulation that might fuel algae or necessitate water changes. Fast-growing stems need regular topping to prevent them from shading slower-growing species. Floating plants require aggressive thinning. Their rapid growth can quickly cover the entire surface if left unchecked. The trimming strategy matters. Removing entire plants occasionally is better than constantly cutting the same specimens. This allows different species to compete for space, maintaining diversity. Save trimmings from successful plants. They make excellent starts for new tanks or gifts for fellow aquarists discovering the Walstad Method. Water changes in established Walstad tanks generate debate. Diana herself performs 25–50% changes every 4 to 6 months, primarily to remove accumulated nitrates. Some aquarists go years without changes, relying entirely on plant uptake and careful feeding. Others do small monthly changes, finding it easier to maintain pristine conditions. The right approach depends on your bioload, plant mass, and personal preferences. When water changes are necessary, technique matters. Avoid disturbing the substrate. Use a gentle flow and perhaps a plate to disperse incoming water. Temperature matching isn't critical for occasional changes, as the gradual nature mimics natural rainfall. Some aquarists use aged water, allowing tap water to sit overnight for chlorine evaporation and temperature equilibration. Feeding strategy evolves with tank maturity. Established tanks produce substantial microorganism populations, infusoria, copepods, various worms, that supplement fish diets. Many aquarists find they can reduce feeding frequency and amount as tanks mature. Some feed only every other day or even less, observing that fish remain healthy and active while foraging naturally throughout the tank. The ecosystem literally evolves over time. Plant species that dominated during establishment might fade, while others, barely surviving initially, suddenly thrive. This succession mirrors natural habitats where community composition changes as conditions shift. A tank dominated by stem plants in year 1 might transition to cryptocorenes and ferns by year 3. Rather than fighting these changes, successful aquarists embrace them as signs of a maturing ecosystem. Soil dynamics change dramatically over years. The initial burst of nutrients from fresh soil moderates as organic matter stabilizes. CO2 production decreases as cellulose decomposes. By year 5 to 10, the soil contributes less to plant nutrition, functioning more as an anchoring medium with excellent CEC properties. This isn't failure, it's natural progression. Some aquarists supplement with root tabs at this stage, while others accept slower growth as a fair trade for continued low maintenance. Fish populations often self-regulate in mature Walstad tanks. Live bearers might experience population booms and busts as food availability fluctuates. Predation by larger fish, competition for resources, and natural mortality create equilibrium. Many aquarists report that their tanks find a sustainable fish population without intervention, nature solving the overstocking problem automatically. Interesting phenomena emerge in long-established tanks. Seasonal patterns develop even in indoor aquariums. Plants growing vigorously in spring, fish breeding in summer, a quiet period in winter. These rhythms occur even under constant artificial lighting, suggesting internal biological clocks or subtle environmental cues we don't fully understand. Equipment considerations change over time. Filters, if used, require minimal maintenance, perhaps rinsing mechanical media monthly. Many aquarists find they can remove filters entirely after establishment, relying solely on plant filtration and gentle circulation from a small powerhead. Heaters often become unnecessary as tanks prove resilient to temperature fluctuations. The biofilm that develops on all surfaces in mature tanks shouldn't be aggressively removed. This complex community of bacteria, algae, and microorganisms provides food for fish and invertebrates while processing waste. The slight haziness on glass and decoration signals a healthy, established ecosystem, not neglect. Catastrophic events. Power outages, heat waves, equipment failures test Walstad tanks differently than high-tech setups. Generally, they prove remarkably resilient. Without CO2 injection to fail or complex filtration to maintain, these tanks often weather disasters better than expected. The diverse biological community provides redundancy. If one process fails, others compensate. Some aquarists document fascinating long-term observations. Plants thought extinct in the tank suddenly reappear from dormant seeds or tubers in the soil. Microorganisms populations cycle through boom and bust periods. Even water chemistry shows subtle seasonal variations despite stable maintenance routines. These observations reveal the complexity and dynamism of even small enclosed ecosystems. The Walstad method represents more than just a technique for keeping aquarium plants. It embodies a fundamental philosophical shift in how we approach aquarium keeping. Instead of imposing our will on a glass box of water, we become facilitators of natural processes. This mindset change often proves more challenging than the technical aspects. Traditional aquarium keeping emphasizes control. We meticulously adjust pH, carefully dose fertilizers, obsessively monitor parameters, and wage war against algae. We're taught that without constant intervention, our tanks will crash. The industry reinforces this belief, selling ever more sophisticated equipment to maintain artificial stability. But what if this approach is fundamentally flawed? Diana Walstad asked different questions. Instead of, "How can I control algae?" she asked, "Why doesn't algae take over natural ponds?" Instead of, "What fertilizers do plants need?" she wondered, "How do wild plants thrive without fertilization?" This shift from controlling problems to understanding systems revolutionized her approach and can revolutionize yours. The Walstad method requires accepting uncertainty and embracing change. Your tank won't look like the manicured aquascapes in magazines. Plants will grow where they want, not necessarily where you place them. Some species will thrive, while others disappear. Fish might breed unexpectedly or establish territories you didn't plan. This isn't failure. It's nature expressing itself. This philosophy extends to problem solving. When issues arise, the Walstad approach asks, "What imbalance caused this?" rather than, "What product will fix this?" Algae isn't attacked with chemicals, but understood as a symptom of excess nutrients or insufficient plant growth. Fish disease isn't immediately medicated, but investigated for environmental stressors. This systems thinking approach often reveals root causes that quick fixes would only mask. Patience becomes a virtue, perhaps the most important one. Natural processes operate on different timescales than we're accustomed to. Bacterial communities take months to fully develop. Plant roots need time to colonize the substrate. The ecosystem requires seasons to find its balance. In our instant gratification world, waiting for nature to solve problems challenges our expectations. The economic philosophy also shifts. Instead of being consumers constantly buying the latest equipment, supplements, and medications, we become observers learning from our tanks. The initial setup might cost more due to quality soil and extensive planting, but long-term expenses plummet. No CO2 refills, minimal electrical costs, rare water changes, and no constant chemical purchases. The money saved can go toward new tanks. Most Walstad aquarists end up with multiple systems. There's an educational component that traditional aquarium keeping often misses. A Walstad tank teaches ecology, chemistry, and biology through direct observation. Children watching these tanks learn about nutrient cycles, symbiosis, and adaptation, not from textbooks, but from living examples. The tank becomes a window into how natural ecosystems function, fostering environmental awareness and scientific thinking. The community aspect of the Walstad method differs too. Forums dedicated to this approach emphasize understanding and experimentation over product recommendations. Aquarists share observations, debate theories, and collectively advance knowledge. It's citizen science at its finest, with hobbyists contributing meaningful observations about ecosystem dynamics. This philosophical shift can be uncomfortable. We're trained to trust technology over nature, intervention over patience. Accepting that billions of bacteria might manage ammonia better than expensive filters challenges our assumptions. Believing that plants can thrive without fertilization seems impossible when the industry insists otherwise. But those who embrace this philosophy often find it liberating. The Walstad method also challenges our relationship with failure. In traditional aquarium keeping, any deviation from ideal parameters represents failure. In the Walstad approach, fluctuations are expected and often beneficial. What looks like failure, plants dying back, algae appearing, water discoloring, often precedes breakthrough moments when the system finds balance. While Diana Walstad established the fundamental principles, creative aquarists worldwide have developed variations and refinements that push the boundaries of what's possible with natural planted tanks. These innovations don't abandon the core philosophy, but adapt it to different situations and goals. The mineralized soil technique represents one significant variation. Some aquarists pre-process organic soil by repeatedly soaking and drying it, converting organic nitrogen to inorganic forms. This mineralization reduces initial ammonia release and can prevent some establishment problems. However, it also reduces the long-term CO2 production that makes Walstad tanks successful. It's a trade-off: easier start but potentially shorter effective lifespan. Dirted tanks with filtration blend approaches. Many aquarists add gentle filtration to their Walstad setups, not for biological filtration, but for water movement and mechanical debris removal. A small sponge filter or hang-on-back filter with just mechanical media can prevent detritus accumulation while preserving the soil's biological filtration. This hybrid approach appeals to those uncomfortable completely abandoning filtration. The Father Fish method, developed by YouTube aquarist Father Fish, takes soil-based tanks to extremes. Using deeper soil layers, often 3 inches or more, under thick sand caps, these tanks rely even more heavily on anaerobic processes. The deeper anaerobic zones potentially provide more complete denitrification. However, they require careful management to prevent toxic hydrogen sulfide production and aren't true Walstad setups. Aquarists in different climates have adapted the method to their conditions. In tropical regions where room temperature maintains 80-degree Makar year-round, spectacular growth occurs without heating. In temperate zones, aquarists select cold-tolerant species and embrace seasonal variations. Some even move tanks outdoors in summer, taking advantage of natural sunlight and temperature fluctuations to trigger breeding and explosive growth. Riparium and paludarium adaptations extend Walstad principles above the waterline. Plants grown emergent with roots in Walstad-style soil and stems above water combine terrestrial CO2 access with aquatic nutrient availability. These setups often show extraordinary growth and provide additional biological filtration. Houseplants like pothos or peace lilies with roots trailing into the water export significant nutrients while adding vertical interest. Nano Walstad tanks push the lower size limits. Tanks as small as 2.5 gallons can successfully employ Walstad principles, though they require careful planning. Plant selection becomes critical. Only the most adaptable species work. Shrimp replace fish as the primary fauna. These tiny ecosystems demonstrate that the method scales down surprisingly well, though stability decreases with volume. Some aquarists experiment with different soil types based on local availability. Pond mud, collected from established natural water bodies, provides incredible biological diversity. Compost from their own gardens, carefully selected for low nitrogen content, creates unique systems. Clay-based soils offer interesting mineral content and CEC properties. Each variation produces slightly different results, contributing to our understanding of soil dynamics. The continuous water change system represents another innovation. Some aquarists use drip systems to continuously add fresh water while overflow removes old water. This maintains stable parameters while exporting excess nutrients. While seemingly contradicting the low-maintenance philosophy, these systems can run automatically, requiring only occasional adjustment. Seasonal manipulation techniques have emerged from long-term observations. Some aquarists deliberately create winter conditions, reducing photoperiod and temperature, to trigger dormancy in certain plants. Spring conditions then stimulate explosive growth and flowering. This biomimicry approach produces natural behaviors impossible in constant condition tanks. Allelopathy management has become sophisticated. Aquarists have mapped which plants coexist peacefully and which wage chemical warfare. Some deliberately use allelopathic plants like duckweed to suppress algae during establishment, then remove them once other plants stabilize. Others maintain separate grow-out tanks for incompatible species, rotating them through display tanks. The Walstad method has evolved considerably since Diana published her groundbreaking book, and its future looks even more promising. As our understanding of aquatic ecosystems deepens and technology advances, new possibilities emerge while core principles remain relevant. Climate change and environmental consciousness are driving increased interest in low-energy aquarium systems. The Walstad method's minimal equipment requirements and low power consumption appeal to environmentally conscious aquarists. As energy costs rise and carbon footprints become considerations, the efficiency of natural systems gains appreciation. Future aquarists might choose Walstad tanks not just for their beauty, but for their sustainability. Scientific understanding of soil microbiomes has exploded in recent years. Research into terrestrial soil bacteria reveals incredible diversity and complex interactions we're only beginning to understand. This knowledge will inevitably transfer to aquarium applications. We might soon select specific bacterial consortiums to inoculate our tanks, optimizing nutrient cycling and disease resistance. The random diversity of current soil-based systems could give way to designed communities. LED technology continues advancing, offering unprecedented control over spectrum and intensity. Future Walstad tanks might use artificial intelligence to adjust lighting based on plant health indicators, CO2 levels, or algae presence. Smart systems could implement perfect siesta timing, seasonal variations, and storm simulations automatically. However, the challenge will be maintaining the method's simplicity while incorporating beneficial technology. Biotechnology might produce plants specifically optimized for Walstad conditions. Imagine cryptocorynes that grow as fast as stem plants, or floating plants that self-regulate their coverage. While genetic modification remains controversial, selective breeding programs could develop varieties that thrive in soil-based, low-tech systems. Native plant conservation efforts might also identify overlooked species perfect for natural aquariums. The COVID-19 pandemic sparked renewed interest in home aquariums, with many discovering the Walstad method while seeking low-maintenance options. This influx of new practitioners brings fresh perspectives and innovations. Online communities share real-time experiences, collectively troubleshooting problems and refining techniques. The method's evolution has accelerated from decades to years. Educational applications are expanding. Schools appreciate Walstad tanks as teaching tools that demonstrate ecological principles without complex maintenance. Universities use them for research into ecosystem dynamics, nutrient cycling, and microbial ecology. These academic applications generate data that benefits hobbyists while advancing scientific understanding. Commercial applications are emerging slowly. Some aquaculture facilities experiment with Walstad principles for growing aquatic plants without fertilizer inputs. Public aquariums create biotope exhibits using natural methods to showcase specific ecosystems. Pet stores might eventually offer established Walstad systems, breaking the cycle of selling unnecessary equipment to beginners. Integration with aquaponics and food production intrigues forward-thinking aquarists. Walstad tanks could form the aquatic component of home food systems, with fish waste fertilizing vegetables while plants purify water. The soil substrate adds another dimension, potentially supporting emergent edible plants. These systems could provide both food and beauty while demonstrating sustainable principles. Digital monitoring and sharing will likely increase. Affordable sensors now track parameters continuously, uploading data to cloud services. Future aquarists might share real-time tank conditions, comparing parameters across thousands of systems worldwide. This data could reveal patterns invisible to individual observers, optimizing methods through collective intelligence. The philosophy behind the Walstad method, working with nature rather than against it, will likely influence other aquarium approaches. High-tech planted tanks might incorporate soil layers for biological stability. Reef aquariums already embrace live rock and natural filtration, paralleling Walstad principles. The artificial barriers between different aquarium styles might dissolve as aquarists recognize universal ecological principles. Cultural exchange enriches the method's development. Asian aquarists bring different aesthetic sensibilities and plant species. European aquarists contribute historical knowledge of soil-based systems. South American aquarists share experience with biotope authenticity. This global exchange creates hybrid approaches that honor the method's principles while adapting to local preferences. Despite technological advances, the core appeal of the Walstad method will likely persist, the magic of creating a self-sustaining ecosystem in your home, the wonder of watching nature balance itself, the satisfaction of understanding rather than controlling, the peace of observing rather than constantly maintaining. These experiences transcend technology. As we reach the end of our journey through the Walstad method, take a moment to reflect on what we've discovered. We've explored how a microbiologist's curiosity revolutionized aquarium keeping by asking simple questions about natural systems. We've delved into the science of soil decomposition, bacterial communities, and plant physiology. We've learned how fish, plants, and microorganisms create a living symphony of interactions that maintain water quality without our constant intervention. But more than technical knowledge, we've discovered a philosophy, a way of thinking about our relationship with nature. The Walstad method teaches us that we don't need to control every parameter, fight every algae cell, or fear every fluctuation. Instead, we can create conditions where nature thrives, solving problems through biological balance rather than chemical intervention. Think about what this means for your own aquarium journey. Whether you're a beginner intimidated by the complexity of high-tech systems or an experienced aquarist tired of constant maintenance, the Walstad method offers an alternative path. It's not the easy path. It requires patience, observation, and the willingness to let go of control. But it's a rewarding path that connects you more deeply with the aquatic world. The principles we've discussed extend beyond aquariums. Understanding ecosystem balance, nutrient cycles, and biological interactions helps us appreciate the natural world around us. That pond in the park, that stream in the forest, they're all following the same principles Diana Walstad applied to aquariums. By creating natural planted tanks, we're not just decorating our homes. We're bringing functioning ecosystems indoors, complete with all their complexity and beauty. For those ready to start their own Walstad journey, remember that success comes from understanding, not just following instructions. Every tank is unique, influenced by your local water, chosen plants, fish selection, and countless other variables. Embrace this uniqueness. Learn from your observations. Share your experiences with the growing community of natural aquarium enthusiasts. The future of aquarium keeping might well be its past, the rediscovery of natural processes that worked long before we invented protein skimmers and CO2 reactors. Diana Walstad didn't invent these processes. She simply reminded us they exist and showed us how to harness them. As we face environmental challenges and seek sustainable solutions, the lessons from these small glass ecosystems become increasingly relevant. Consider starting small if you're intrigued but uncertain. A 10-gallon Walstad tank costs less than many people spend on restaurant meals in a month, yet it provides years of enjoyment and learning. Plant it heavily, stock it lightly, and practice patience. Watch as the cloudy water clears, the plants establish, and the ecosystem finds its balance. Experience the satisfaction of understanding why things happen rather than just following rules. For those already practicing the Walstad method, consider documenting and sharing your experiences. Every observation contributes to our collective understanding. That unusual plant behavior you noticed, that creative solution to a problem, that long-term observation about system evolution, these insights advance the method for everyone. We're all citizen scientists when we observe and share. Education remains crucial. If you have children, involve them in your Walstad project. Let them observe the nitrogen cycle in action. Watch shrimp molt and grow. See how plants pearl when photosynthesizing vigorously. These experiences create lasting connections to science and nature that no textbook can match. You're not just raising fish, you're raising future environmental stewards. The Walstad method reminds us that complexity doesn't require complicated solutions. Nature has been balancing ecosystems for billions of years without our help. By understanding and applying these natural principles, we can create beautiful, thriving aquariums that largely maintain themselves. It's a humbling reminder that sometimes the best thing we can do is step back and let nature work. As you continue your aquarium journey, whether with Walstad tanks or other methods, carry these lessons with you. Question conventional wisdom. Observe before reacting. Understand systems rather than symptoms. Work with nature rather than against it. These principles will serve you well not just in aquarium keeping, but in life. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of the Walstad Method. If you found this documentary valuable, please share it with fellow aquarists who might benefit from learning about natural planted tanks. Like and subscribe to support more in-depth explorations of aquarium science and ecology. Remember, every great aquarist started with curiosity and a willingness to learn. Your perfect ecosystem is waiting to be created, one handful of soil and one plant at a time. The glass box in your living room can become a window into the wonders of aquatic ecology. All it takes is understanding, patience, and the courage to let nature lead the way. Until next time, may your plants pearl, your fish thrive, and your water stay crystal clear naturally.